Hey everybody, Crypto Mentor 99. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? No, I'm not from New York, originally from Chicago. Now I'm living in Missouri. Someone mentioned that. No, love New York, but I'm not a New York guy. Love the East Coast. Hey, before I introduce Mr. Wheels, which is going to be a fantastic interview, shameless plug to my new friend on Twitter and YouTube, Monica Franco, which I interviewed her. She's an MMA pro fighter, 2-1 with Invicta. She started Aloha Friday Kitchen, a catering business out in Provo, Utah. I'm going to put her information below. Now let's get to Mr. Wheels. Mr. Wheels, what's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem. So, just to give some context here, I'm going to say a couple weeks ago, I mean, it was before Veterans Day for sure. Mr. Wheels put a post on Twitter like, hey, we got a traveling game. We're going out to Salt Lake City. And I noticed that they were all in wheelchairs. The team was in wheelchair. And I'm like, where are you guys going? And then I followed Mr. Wheels. He's like, oh, well, I'm a part of the USA Wheelchair Football League. I'm like, I didn't know that that was a thing. We had a pre-interview. We talked. Matt's a real sweet guy out on the East Coast, out in Buffalo. And I said, you know what? Let's just do an interview. So this interview is not just for veterans. It's not just for regular people. You could be a regular people, or you could be a veteran with a mental or physical disability. And Mr. Wheels, let's start with where your disability all started. So kind of fill people in on that, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, I joined the military in 2006 as 11 Bravo, also known as infantryman. I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Went on a deployment for 15 months. While I was there, excuse me, I was injured. I was able to walk for the first couple of years after, but I had to use a cane. So I suffered. I broke my back and I had some nerve damage as well, which caused a lot of discomfort and numbness in my feet and legs. So I stopped officially walking and transitioned to a chair in 2015. And when you're in the chair now, you're not sure really what to do. And
Sure.
I accidentally came across sled hockey. I was at a UB football game. I was approached by another veteran with a an amputee. He was an amputee, and he said, "Hey, have you ever heard of sled hockey?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And I was like, what is that? Just like any normal person would ask, what
Sure.
is sled hockey? Why is
You
that
bet.
different than regular hockey? And he said, "Well, it's people with physical disabilities. Since you're in a wheelchair, what they do is put you in a bucket, and there's a blade underneath. You use two small hockey sticks with ice picks at the end to propel yourself." And me being a competitive person, I was like, all right, that's another thing I want to tackle. Another thing I want to check off my list. I
Sure.
build up a resume of life, so I keep doing everything I can. And I came across sled hockey. After sled hockey, it was wheelchair football, and then from wheelchair football to wheelchair lacrosse. So that's what put me, to this point in time right now. Like I said, my military injury that I sustained in 2009 towards the end of my deployment. I'm sorry, 2008 towards the end of my deployment. So it left. I'm able to use walking sticks to walk a little bit, but 95% time I move around in my chair.
Okay, so I didn't know this when we talked, I don't know, like a week or so ago. So first you got into sled hockey, then
Correct.
football, then lacrosse.
Yes, yes. Sled hockey, like, and the funny thing was, the person who told me about sled hockey was somebody who I became really good friends with, another Army veteran. We hit the ice for the first. I played hockey for the first 4 years without any other sport because technically there was, nothing else I was interested in besides rugby. I'm a very physical guy, and I need
Sure.
to hit. I'm the Rob Ray of my team. So anybody who's familiar with Rob Ray, he likes to hit, he likes to
Oh
fight.
yeah.
So I'm that guy, not necessarily fighting, but I will defend all of my teammates. But I'm a very physical guy, and I love the contact, and that's where I found wheelchair football. And they said, "Oh, it's two hand touch," and why do we have to wear helmets? after the first practice, I realized why we need to wear helmets after that. We were banging into each other, knocking heads, falling out of our chairs, rolling. So it's a great sport. I love it. I absolutely love it.
So now is the again, just to give the listeners some understanding. So the USA Wheelchair Football League. So you're in Buffalo, out on the East Coast.
Correct.
You guys travel to like tournaments and whatnot. Could you explain that to the people?
Yeah. So there are 3 total tournaments a year. There is the, they switch it up from time to time, but basically for the most part, it's Kansas City, Chicago, Tampa, or Salt Lake City. So those are the 4 rotations right now, but there's 3 major tournaments. So our first tournament was actually it was in Chicago. So we went to Chicago. They had, I think it was 9 total teams that came, and I do believe as of right now there's 11, possibly 12 teams in the USA Wheelchair Football League at this
Okay,
moment.
cool.
So yes, first tournament was Chicago, and about 4 weeks after that, we went to Salt Lake City. And actually, in between there, we had our first ever home game at Buffalo River Works, and we had over 250 people
Yeah, you said that.
show
I
up.
remember.
It was unbelievable. Anybody who's been to a Bills game, the whole crowd, let's go Buffalo. Like it was just, it erupted. And I've never been a part of, even in high school sports, college sports, even coming back from the military, people clapping and cheering. No, it was so different. You look up and you just see everybody around you just looking down. And I truly, at that moment, I knew I was supposed to be there, and I was proud to be a Buffalo Bill.
Oh, that's awesome. When we got off the call about a week ago, I started thinking to myself, I'm like, did Mr. Wheels say lacrosse? And I'm like, no, he couldn't have said lacrosse. And I'm like, I better double check that. So you did say lacrosse.
Correct. Yes. After I
Well,
did
explain
wheelchair,
that to everybody. Like,
yeah, during wheelchair football, there was 3 guys who kept saying, Matt, you're very athletic. Let's get you to lacrosse. Have you ever played lacrosse? I said I played a little box lacrosse in Canada, but not in a wheelchair. So they said we need a goalie. I said I have never played goalie a day in my life, but I'd be willing. Like I said, it's another thing that I want to accomplish. So I said, you can't tell me that I can't do it, so I'm going to go do it. So I went over to wheelchair lacrosse, and I mean, basically the only difference is that you're in a wheelchair. They use that's the hardest part for those guys. They have to hold their stick and they have to move.
I was going to say, what does that look like? Yeah.
It's really weird. So for the most part, in stand-up lacrosse, they run with the ball
Right.
as much as they
Right.
can. So in a wheelchair, you kind of want to get momentum when you catch the ball, not prior, because it's hard to take off. So a lot of times they'll hang on to stick with one, push the wheel, use their core and turn, and then use the same wheel.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So that's what I do in football as well. If I catch the ball, I'll go here, transition back over here, and I'll keep rotating. But yeah, it's tough too. So they usually get momentum. So when they catch it, they can use their hips to turn either way. They cradle and maybe give just one stroke because they're already in momentum. But that's most of the time that's what they do. So it's the same thing as lacrosse, except for it's tough to actually go with the ball from
Oh
a
gosh.
stop position.
Okay. Now, backing up a second, I should have asked you this at the beginning. Is the sled hockey and the lacrosse, is that specific just to Buffalo, New York? Or is the hockey and the lacrosse like the football where you do some
Everywhere.
traveling?
We do the most traveling with sled hockey. We go to like 5 or 6 tournaments a year.
No way.
So yeah, we are all over the place. So some of the places we go to every year, we go to Lake Placid, which is an amazing tournament. I love Salt Lake, or I'm sorry,
Lake
Lake
Placid.
Placid, and Lake Placid, Maryland, Fort Drum, New York, St. Louis,
Wow.
California, sometimes Chicago, somewhere in Ohio. So we travel, a lot for sled hockey. Actually, the most out of any sport.
Okay. Well, I liked what you said on Twitter, because I was thinking, like, when I first saw your road trip to Salt Lake City with the USA Wheelchair Football League, at first I thought it was just a group of veterans, like, hey, you had to be a veteran and you had to have something wrong, or it had to be a physical disability. But you kind of said, no, man, it's mental or physical disability, and you don't have to be a veteran, right?
Correct. Yeah. Anybody with any type of disability, um, it doesn't have to be in Buffalo. This is for any area. So if
Right.
you are a veteran, head over to the VA and talk to your maybe OEF, OIF officer, or your somebody who could at least direct you in the right direction to orthopedic therapy, OT, and they can actually direct you in what sports they have available in that specific area and guide you. And not only that, that they will supply you with a sled, sticks, and hand-me-down hockey equipment, which we usually try to get donated to every VA if we get a chance to.
Sure.
And the Buffalo Sabres, they actually donate some of their gear to us. So, we are in cahoots with Buffalo Sabres, the Buffalo Bandits, and the Buffalo Bills. So they try their best to supply some of the things that we might need as far as, gloves, sticks, jerseys, pads, elbow pads, shoulder pads. So, whatever. And that's what they do. So it's great to be part of three major sports in Buffalo: lacrosse, football, and hockey. So it's
Okay,
nice
so
that we're
like let's
represented.
say for the hockey, because we're talking about it now, what if someone wasn't a veteran, right? But they're like, oh my gosh, like this Mr. Real sounds like a cool guy. I'm gonna put his Twitter link and stuff below, guys, if you want to get a hold of him. But like, what about someone who may not be a veteran? Like, what would be the best avenue for them, Matt?
A lot of times in major areas, major cities, they have like an adaptive program. Now they're all named something different. Like
Sure.
ours in our area is Greater Buffalo Adaptive Sports, and we do curling. We do a lot. There's a lot of other things that we do. Those are the three sports that I do. But for people for hockey with disabilities, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad start, to be completely honest, to even call the VA,
I
because
was
they
thinking that. Yeah.
they might be able to direct you in the right way. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to my VA and be guided to these things. So for people with disabilities, I can understand how hard it would be to find stuff like this. So I would recommend calling, the VA. And I'm just trying to think of what department to be transferred to. I'm not even sure. Maybe the OEF OIF office. It's for veterans from Operation Iraqi Freedom or Operation
Sure. Okay.
Enduring Freedom.
Okay. And then let's talk about you personally. And again, you could self disclose as little or as much as you want. And I didn't ask you this when we talked a week ago, but so take us to the point where you're in your wheelchair 100%
Correct.
or
Okay.
99% of the time. And when you first found the sled hockey, like, were you discouraged about life? Were you, sorry, depressed? Were you hopeless? Were you like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna, I just feel like I'm not really contributing to
Yeah.
society, or however you would say that?
Yeah.
Was that you, and then the sled hockey woke up your heart and said, oh my gosh, I love this stuff?
That's actually a great question. When I first transitioned to a chair, I was depressed at first, just because a lot of the day to day things became very hard to do. Um, but I consider myself having a strong mental aspect on things, where I try to look at the good in things. I try not to get too down on myself. But there was a time for about a year or so when there was nothing to do. I get in my chair, I mope around. I
Sure.
was depressed. I isolated myself. And when I found sled hockey, it was like that missing piece. There's that missing piece to put together. So even if it wasn't your missing piece, it's a way to start your puzzle. Once you get in, you're surrounded by people with similar disabilities or whatnot, physical or mental. And once you get to there, you might branch off more, start to feel a little bit better, like you're communicating more, so you're not necessarily isolated. Then all of a sudden you become more competitive. That leads to day-to-day challenges that you maybe looked at as something was hard, that become more of a challenge. Now you're like, oh, I can do that. That's nothing. I play these sports and do this. So yes, it was very tough at first, but it gave me a whole new purpose.
Okay. All right. Well, we're starting to wind down a little bit here. What would you say? I might have an idea about what you would say to this person maybe watching right now. Again, just a regular civilian or a veteran. But what would you say to the person who was you back in the day? You felt isolated, you were discouraged, you were a little down on life, probably down on yourself, maybe mad at the world. What would
Yeah.
you say to that person who's listening now or who's watching now?
Okay. I would say in the nicest way possible, get your butt up and do something. You know, that is the one thing, and that's me being, you know, a little bit pushy for people, because when I say that, it's not necessarily a mean thing. I'm saying that everybody has the capability to get up and do these things. You just need that one thing. So everybody needs to start by making that first step, and they need to do that. And that's one of the hardest parts, is to make that step, make that call, show up here, participate in this. You need to make that first step. Don't get down on yourself. There are things out there. Trust me, it might take you a little bit of time to find them, but don't give up. I was in, you know, a horrible spot in my life, see, being in this chair, and sports have changed a lot. And even if you have not been a part of sports, that might be the best thing for you at this point in time. You know,
Mm,
so just don't give up, keep going. I said, stay positive. I mean, it's very easy to get down on yourself. Stay positive, keep looking, just do what you can. Like I said, get your butt up and go do something about it. Don't be another statistic.
amen. Okay. So again, we talked about this during the pre-interview. Whenever I interview someone, and I did the same with Monica Franco a couple of weeks ago, I always give the person that I'm interviewing the last word. Either I maybe um, didn't ask you a question, or you're like, oh, I want to talk about this, but Crypto Mentor 99 never brought it up or whatever. So you've got the last word, Matt. What would you like to say about yourself, football, hockey, disability, whatever? You got the last floor, or you got the floor
Last,
for the
all
last
right.
say.
All right. So if anybody is interested, please reach out to me. Even if you want some guidance outside of Buffalo, I would definitely help. That's something that I actually truly enjoy, is helping people, getting people involved. So reach out to me. We can start just by talking. It could be through inbox. So I am one of those people you can reach out to, and you know, we could build a relationship from there, and I could help point in the right direction. So that's one thing. Like I said, I'm here and I'm available if anybody does need me. And like I said before, don't give up. You know, look for that missing piece, or find that start, you know, to your life, that first puzzle piece. And lastly, go Bills.
That's right, baby. Well, listen, everybody, you have not seen the last of Matt, who we affectionately call Mr. Wheels on Twitter, or that's the name that he selected. We're going to have Matt back. And again, if you have any questions, I'm going to put not his all of his contact information, but his Twitter contact information below. And Matt, I appreciate it, and we will definitely have you back on.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.